This all goes back to when I was about 10 years old. It was my nephew and niece's birthdays. My niece is about 4 years older than me. I don't know how, but she just is. My nephew was about 1 year older than me. My niece and nephew's birthdays were both in January, and their birthdays were pretty close together. So, my sister and her fiancé decided to book a hotel for both birthdays on the same day. It was me, my nephew Jarrett, Anthony, and Jay. We were all in one room at the beginning of the hall, and towards the middle of the hall was my sister and her fiancé, with the 2 little kids. Then, at the very end of the hall, was my niece and like 4 of her other friends. Me and the guys were at first just hanging out and talking since we hadn't seen each other in a while. About an hour in of us just hanging out, we hear loud footsteps and giggling, and then a bunch of knocks on our door. Of course, we assumed it was my niece and her friends, and we were right. They would keep coming back and knocking, just to get our attention, but we ignored them. But as they started to knock more and more, it got quieter and quieter. It went from jubilant laughter and loud knocks to no sound at all, but 2 tiny knocks. We were a little weirded out, and then Jay asked us if we thought it was still the girls knocking on our door. That sentence gave me chills. The possibility of someone else knocking on the door other than the girls freaked me out. But I pushed it to the side and said it was still probably them, and we shouldn't worry about it. But of course, we were wrong. Anthony called my niece to be sure they weren't still knocking on the door. My niece said that they stopped doing that a while ago. Me and Jarrett looked at each other in disbelief. We didn't buy it. That's when Jay motioned for us to be quiet, and then pointed at the bottom of the door that enters our room. As usual, you can see the hallway light from that tiny crack under the door. But something was wrong. You could see 2 shadows under the door, which I'm guessing were feet. At this point, I was really freaked out, but of course, Jay adds to my stress when he goes over to the peephole and whispered, "Nobody's there." After Jay said that, I felt chills down my spine. I went over to the peephole to see for myself, and Jay was correct. Nobody was standing there. But yet it still showed the foot shadows under the door. Jay whispered that it was either a ghost or somebody ducking down. The somebody ducking down thing scared me because, well, who would do that? Clearly, that somebody ducking down didn't want us to see their face, which weirded me out. I dwelled on it for a bit, not paying attention to the shadow under the door, when all of a sudden, the shadow was gone. Anthony pointed out that it was gone, but we didn't see when it left. We were all pretty confused and nervous up to this point, so we called my niece and told her what we just saw. She was freaked out too, so we knew this was serious. For some reason, my sister and her fiancé said the boys needed to stay in the boys' room and the girls needed to stay in theirs. We ignored that rule because we were all pretty scared, and my niece had invited us over to her room since we were experiencing weird stuff. We got our important stuff and headed over to my niece's room. Although I noticed that as we were walking down the hall, you could hear people talking in their rooms since not everybody's door was completely shut. But once we got to the end of the hallway where my niece's room was, it was dead silent. I knocked on the door with Jay, Anthony, and Jarrett behind me, but nobody answered. Anthony checked the text message my niece sent him, and we were at the right room. Then I wondered if this was just some big troll. It wasn't. I knocked once more, and still, no answer. Anthony called my niece, and it went straight to voicemail. Then all the lights in the hallway flickered at the exact same time. Me and the guys looked at each other for about a second and a half, and then we booked it back to our room. When we got back to our room, we were all shaken up. I'll admit, as a 10-year-old with no experiences with ghosts and weird light flickering, I had some tears in my eyes. Anthony called my niece, and she asked why we weren't over there. Anthony explained what happened, and even my niece was worried and dumbfounded. My niece said to come back over one more time, so we did. This time there was no dead silence, no lights flickering, and she opened the door on the first knock. The weird thing is, we didn't get the wrong address the first time. We went out into the hall, thinking we had the wrong room, but my niece opened the door to the same room we knocked on twice before. That weirded me out, but we went in and just sat down and retold them everything that happened. And then we got all the girls spooked. But they weren't scared for long because eventually they were bugging Anthony and Jarrett, and that got the two boys mad. So they said they were going to walk around the halls for a bit. Jarrett and Anthony went to walk around the halls since my niece made them mad. Me, Jay, and my niece and her friends all just hung out until Anthony and Jarrett came back. About 30 minutes later, Anthony comes back, looking trembled, while Jarrett has tears in his eyes. "What happened?" I asked, because I had never seen Jarrett or Anthony so spooked. They were talking at the same time, and I couldn't understand them, so I simply said, "One at a time." They calmed down and told us what happened. When they were walking around for the first 5 minutes, they decided to go down the stairs. When they went down the stairs, they encountered a girl with baggy black pants and a baggy black hoodie. When Anthony saw her eyes, he ran back up the stairs and Jarrett followed him. The girl said, "Why are you guys running?" After they went up about 2 flights of stairs to our hallway, they stopped and caught their breath. Anthony said that her eyes were super big and red, and that it looked like she was on drugs. He said he didn't know people's eyes could get that big. He said while they were catching their breath, the girl walked up the stairs and stopped on our floor. She walked over to the elevators and said, "Want to go in the elevator with me?" Anthony and Jarrett ran down the hallway to my niece's room as fast as they could. And that's how we got where we are now. The rest of the night after that was kind of peaceful, besides everyone being nervous. The problem was that Jay pointed out that we can't stay in the girls' room all night because we weren't supposed to be in there. Eventually, we got the courage to go back to our room, and then after that, nothing else happened for the rest of the night.